Hello and welcome. I am Mr. Murphy, and in this particular video we're going to be looking at Power Standard Skill number 5. And in this particular video we're going to be looking at a couple of different types of graphs, and from those graphs we're going to be looking at the intervals where the graph is going to be increasing or decreasing. So here's an example of something that you'll be working on your own here in a minute. So here we have a couple of graphs. And you can see here that in the first one on the upper left there, we're looking to see where that graph, at what intervals that graph is increasing at. And in the graph right above me here, we're going to be looking at where the graph, at what intervals the graph is decreasing. But before you try some on your own, let's look at some together. So here we have a couple of graphs. So here we have on the upper left here we have a parabola, and we're going to be looking at where that graph is increasing and at what intervals it's increasing. So let's take a minute and look at some things about this graph and see how we would write our answer. So first off, if we're looking to see where the graph is increasing, it looks like from about here on up the graph is increasing, and when we identify an interval we're looking at what part of the x-axis is the values, or our y, increasing. Well, from here on out it's going to be increasing, and we're just going to assume that it goes on forever. So the way that we're going to write this interval is from where x is 2, and as our values for x continue to increase, as our values for x continue to go to the right, this graph is continuing to go upwards. So we would identify this interval where the graph is increasing as x is greater than or equal to 2. Pretty easy. Let's look at one. This is what we call a sine wave. And you can see here it's going up and down, up and down. And along our x-axis, this time we're dealing with our x-axis being in degrees. So this would be something that we would look at in trigonometry. And this one's asking us, where is this graph decreasing? Well, here we have a couple of intervals where it's decreasing. So going from here to here, so again where our x is going from negative 180 or negative 360 to negative 180. It's decreasing in that interval. It's again decreasing from here down to where x is going from 0 to 180. So from this interval, it's also decreasing. So again, we identify these intervals by what we see on the x-axis. So this is going from negative 360 to a negative 180 is where the graph is decreasing. As soon as you hit 180, it's increasing. And so we would identify that first interval like this. We would say that negative 360 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to negative 180. Now that next interval, because as soon as this graph reaches up here where the y value is 1 and where x is 0, it's going to decrease again until x reaches 180 degrees. So from 0 degrees, so when x is going from 0 to 180 degrees, the graph is decreasing again. And so from just this screen that we're looking at, the intervals where this graph is decreasing is from negative 360 to negative 180, and from 0 degrees to 180 degrees. You want to make sure that you write your answer like this. You always want to start with the smallest value first, the largest value second, because when you do that, the inequality symbol you would use would be your less than or equal to. And then we identify where we're getting these values from. We're getting these values from the x-axis, so we put that x in the middle. So that would be how we find the intervals if it's decreasing. So now I want you to try these that we saw a second ago. I want you to go ahead and attempt these two on your own. So why don't you pause the video and hit play when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, so for this first one, they're looking to see where is this graph increasing at. And we can see that for this particular graph, that this would be the interval going from where x is 1 to where x is 7. The graph is increasing. The rest of the graph, as far as the screen that we're seeing, the rest of the graph is decreasing. So we're going to say our answer here starts where x is 1. So we're going to have 1 is less than or equal to x. It ends where x is 7. So it'll be 1 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 7. So that would be your answer. For the next one, we should see that here we're looking to see where is the graph decreasing, and it's decreasing between these in this interval, and again it's decreasing through this interval. So to identify those intervals, again we look at the x-axis, and this time our x-axis is in degrees. So we would say this first interval would go from negative 270 degrees, which is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to negative 90 degrees. The second interval starts at a positive 90 degrees, is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 270 degrees. So that's how you write your intervals for that sine wave. That is where it's decreasing. Well, there you have it. That was a pretty straightforward skill. So hopefully after watching this video you feel like you have a better understanding of how to identify those intervals where a graph might be increasing or a graph is decreasing. So good luck now as you try some of these on your own.